welcome. Today I'll be doing this whole episode by myself because it seems the voice we have bought for Argent Sky was in fact rented, and now he's gone to get his voice back. There's also going to be no sponsor for today because of the recent actions of the Scarlet Printing Press and the hatred that our Night Elf sponsors had for his recent material. So because of that, I will be doing the first war by myself. Oh boy. All goes as planned. The orcs will slay the humans, and I will control them through warlock chiefs like Gul'dan. I will lead this mishappened creation to the lost tomb where Sargeras' body is protected against demons and human, but not against orc, and my form will be free. And then I can shed this lumpish body and weakened spirit and burn this world as it so richly deserves. Magus Medivh. The First War, also referred to as the First Great War, was a conflict fought between the orcish clans of Draenor and the humans of the kingdom of Stormwind. Nice, right? Stormwind. Who doesn't like Stormwind? I never met anybody that doesn't like Stormwind. Or maybe just orcs, because they burned it, but you know. Anyway, Prelude. The kingdom of Stormwind was a prosperous one. The humans who dwelled there turned the land into a paradise. The knights of Stormwind and the clerics of Northshire Abbey roamed far and wide, serving the king's people with honor and justice. The well-trained armies of the king were maintaining a lasting peace since the days of the Gnoll War. The people of Azeroth were unaware that the powerful human mage Medivh was seeking a way to destroy this kingdom and wreak havoc on the land. With the help of an otherworldly being named Gul'dan, the two managed to open a portal between their two worlds, a portal which will later become known as the Dark Portal. Through the portal came the orcish Horde. The humans did not know from whence these foul creatures came, and none were prepared for the terror that they spawned. When reports of mysterious creatures lurking around the Black Morass reached Stormwind, rumors spread throughout the streets that they were either vengeful spirits, trolls armed with some new breed of power, or a strange race from across the Great Sea. Their warriors wielded axes and spears with deadly proficiency, while others rode dark wolves as black as the moonless night. Unimagined were the destructive powers of their evil magic, derived from the fires of the twisting nether. Filled with the demonic blood of Manoroth, these creatures lusted for war and would destroy anything that prevented them from reaching their goal, to conquer Azeroth. With an ingenious arsenal of weaponry and powerful magic, these two forces collided in a contest of cunning, intellect, and brute strength, with the victor claiming dominance over the whole of Azeroth. The First War. Early stages, of course. King Lane dispatched Sir Anduin Lothar to uncover what these creatures were. Lothar led a small force of knights to scout the Black Morass, resulting in the Knights of Stormwind clashing with the orcs for the first time in a series of bloody skirmishes. Lothar and his men scoured a number of small victories, yet for every orc killed, two more seemed to take its place. The humans were more outnumbered in each subsequent battle, and Lothar was eventually forced to pull back without venturing deep enough into the heavily guarded Black Morass to find the Dark Portal. Lothar informed King Lane the invaders were bringing in reinforcements from somewhere, and the kingdom readied itself for a full-scale war. Elsewhere, the orcs reported to War Chief Blackhand that the region's humans were now aware of their presence. Preparations and scouting ceased, and the First War had begun in the earnest. Lothar and his soldiers soon crossed paths with the Guardian Medivh and his apprentice Khadgar on a scouting mission to the Black Morass. He had encouraged his friend to rejoin Stormwind's defenses, though understood that Medivh struggled with the power he unleashed on the Gurubashi years ago. The Guardian played along and feigned a fear of tapping into unwielding magical powers. though his true intention was to buy time for the Horde to gain power. Lothar also spoke with Khadgar, telling him about Medivh's troubled past and asking him to act as a caretaker in addition to an apprentice. Medivh became more erratic afterward, disappearing for days at a time and being exhausted when he finally returned. Warchief Blackhand ordered raiding parties to cut deep into Stormwind's lands to drive panic into the human populace. Entire villages in Brightwood, Westfall again, and the southern Red Ridge Mountains fell, their inhabitants either killed or forced to flee. By the time Stormwind's patrols rode to defend the villages, the Horde was already gone. They were an enemy unlike any the human had ever faced. King Lane had named Lothar the King's Champion, the highest military rank in the kingdom. Deciding to use the orcs' mobility against them, Lothar studied the pattern of targets the Horde would strike and set up ambushes along their paths of retreat. A loyal knight named Gavinar the Dire was given command of large numbers of troops by Lothar. In some cases, small units of human knights were able to bring down entire orc raiding parties without any casualties. The orcs soon realized that the humans were unlike any enemy they had ever faced as well. Messengers were dispatched by King Lane to the other human kingdoms, warning of mysterious, fearsome, green-skinned invaders. However, no help was received as the reports were not believed. Lordaeron was considered the most likely nation to help. However, Deathwing, disguised as a visiting Stormwind noble, openly mocked King Lane and claimed the threat was actually a rebellion of disgruntled citizens, causing Lordaeron to only politely wish Lane luck with his troubles. In the past, Stormwind had prided itself on standing alone and developed a policy of isolationism in recent decades, which many other nations saw as arrogant and likely influenced their passiveness. Other forces. While most of the Horde's attacks were focused on Stormwind's forces, Chieftain Kilrog Derai and his Bleeding Hollow clan led a few raiding parties into the western jungles of Stranglethorn Vale, as the region reminded them of their ancestral home and they had aims of claiming it for themselves. However, the Gurubashi jungle trolls who dwelled in the jungles united to fight back against this new threat and began a guerrilla campaign against the orcs. The fighting between the two groups was unspeakably vicious. While the Bleeding Hollows seemed to outnumber the Gurubashi in every skirmish, they were still at a severe disadvantage against the trolls' knowledge of the region. The Gurubashi were willing to give up vast swaths of jungles to draw the orcs deeper into their territory, only to then launch bloody ambushes from all directions, resulting in horrific losses for the Bleeding Hollow. When Blackhand learned how many orcs were dying in Stranglethorn for no apparent gain, he ordered the Bleeding Hollow to retreat and join the fight against the humans. The Horde would deal with the trolls later. The clerics from the Brotherhood of Northshire risked their lives to heal soldiers wounded in combat. In the past, the clerics were known to heal gnolls and trolls, which had granted them safety on the battlefield in some cases. This was not the case with the orcs, who ruthlessly targeted every cleric they found after learning of their abilities. Many clerics died without armor or weapons, but they never hesitated from joining battle, making their bravery legendary among Stormwind's forces. As the war unfolded, the Twilight Hammer clan became a source of irritation for Warchief Blackhand. The clan's members were known to disobey orders, and too many wandered off never to be seen again. Blackhand considered destroying the clan to make an example of them, but the ogre mage Cho'Gall, who had been acting as the Twilight Hammer's de facto leader, offered to become the clan's official leader and keep it in line, which Blackhand allowed. The clan's disciplinary problems ended almost overnight, and they became obedient and effective soldiers, to the pleasant surprise of Blackhand. Cho'Gall had understood the clan and their beliefs. A clan attuned to the dark energies, they had been hearing the old god's whispers louder and clearer after arriving in Azeroth. Cho'Gall told the clan the hour of twilight was near and depended upon the Horde's success. Until then, the clan had to keep up appearances with War Chief Blackhand, while obeying their true masters in secret. And now we're getting the first siege of Stormwind Keep. 3 years after the Dark Portal had been opened, the Orcish raids on the countryside had razed farms, towns, villages, forges, and trade houses, causing ruin to Stormwind's economy. Even more dire, many sources of food supply had been destroyed or fallen into the Horde's hands, threatening Stormwind City with running out of supplies in a few months. With this knowledge in mind, Warchief Blackhand decided to bring the Horde north to conquer Red Ridge Mountains, and from there launch an attack on Stormwind City. The Horde marched on the foothills of Red Ridge with little resistance, and believed the humans would not attack before they reached Stormwind City, which was exactly what Commander Anduin Lothar wanted them to think. See? Makes sense. An Orc raiding party led by Blackhand went to the mountains, hoping to claim Lakeshire. However, Lothar and his knights suddenly charged down the slopes without warning and surrounded the Orcs in a spectacular ambush. The Horde raiders fought hard, but almost all of them were slain. Lothar himself had almost killed Blackhand, but 2 Shadow Council warlocks accompanying Blackhand had turned the tide of battle with their fell fire and forced Lothar to withdraw. Sure. Blackhand was humiliated by his brush with death and blamed the Shadow Council for not sensing the ambush. He personally executed 2 warlocks that saved his life for incompetence, which angered Gul'dan as they were his subordinates and limited in numbers. Weeks later, a larger force took Lakeshire and the surrounding land. After Brightwood, now known as Duskwood of course, Westfall again, and Red Ridge Mountains had fallen, the Horde marched onto Stormwind City, the capital of the Kingdom of Stormwind. Thousands of Horde soldiers marched through Elwyn Forest and encircled Stormwind, cutting off all access except for the sea. Blackhand had ordered Kilrog, Deadeye, and Cho'Gall to lead their Bleeding Hollow and Twilight Hammer clans in the assault on Stormwind. To weaken the city's defenses, siege engines bombarded the city walls throughout the night, and at dawn Kilrog and Cho'Gall launched their attack. While Orcs charged the battlements, Warlocks engulfed Stormwind's soldiers in fell fire, resulting in staggering losses. As it seemed Stormwind would fall that day, there were suddenly cries of an attack from the Horde's rear lines. Lothar and the majority of Stormwind's knights had moved around the Horde by sea. The king's commander was now leading a charge through Elwyn Forest, catching the Orcs in the rear guard, completely by surprise as the knights cut through their lines. As the Bleeding Hollow and Twilight's Hammer tried to push back the knights, Stormwind's larger gates opened and soldiers poured out of the city to flank the Orcs in a counterattack. Outflanked on both sides and suffering many casualties, the Orcs were left with no choice but to flee. This was the greatest disaster to ever happen to the Horde. Blackhand was infuriated and barely stopped himself from executing Kilrog and Cho'Gall because of their clan members might revolt. The Horde withdrew to Red Ridge to devise a new plan. Lothar and King Lane had received information about the Horde's battlements from Khadgar, who had learned them from Garona, which helped prepare for the attack on Stormwind. The Orcish Horde marches north. After the initial assault on Stormwind Keep, the Orcish Horde now knew what to expect from the human troops. Blackhand assigned Ogrim Doomhammer to oversee the construction of an outpost in the Swamps of Sorrow. The task was simple enough. The Orcs had to build at least 6 farms so that they could keep their troops well fed and ready to battle, and the barracks to protect the farms and to create a strategic outpost. Kairos, from the Swamp of Sorrows, Ogrim led his... What's that Kairos thing from? Who matters? From the Swamp of Sorrows, Ogrim led his troops onward, while crushing any opposition that they had encountered. His troops' first real opposition was Grand Hamlet. With orders from Blackhand, Ogrim built a simple outpost nearby and prepared his troops for battle. Ogrim's troops razed Grand Hamlet to the ground and left no survivor standing. One night, a runner sent by Warchief Blackhand reported that Griselda, the Warchief's own daughter, had run off with the outlaw Turok and his band of ogres. Wolf Riders were assigned to track them down. They were discovered to be hiding in the dungeons below the Dead Mines. By order of his warchief, Ogrim led a small group of warriors into the dungeons and eliminated Turok, his forces, and even Griselda. On their return from the dungeon, Ogrim received word from advanced scouts that the recently established outpost near the Red Ridge Mountains was under siege. A group of raiders were dispatched to assist Ogrim's troops in taking back the outpost and crushing the human opposition. After saving the outpost from destruction, Ogrim's troops were ordered to search the area and seek out after saving the outpost, and seek out from whence the human troops came from. Once the location was found, Ogrim ordered the remainder of his troops to dispose of it. The encampment was completely destroyed, and the threat was put to an end for good. Wanting for his troops to learn how the human's magic was created, Blackhand ordered Ogrim to lead an army to the town known as Sunnyglade and ravage it, leaving intact the Mage Tower to study its knowledge. The humans of the town were fat and lazy, with their prosperity, and their weak human armies were easily smashed into pieces. The kingdom retaliates. The kingdom of Stormwind sent emissaries to the orcs, hoping to negotiate with them. But if any returned, they did so in pieces. The mages of Stormwind also asked Dalaran's Kirin Tor for help, but they thought the orcs little more than local nuisance. As a test for his abilities, King Lane appointed the Defender of the Crown as regent over a small parcel of the land. The Defender of the Crown changed the town into a farming center with 6 farms in order to feed Stormwind's troops. A barrack was also constructed in the farming center, as spies reported that there were orc patrols in the area. The few orc patrols in the vicinity were wiped out. Sometime later, spies reported that the orcs around Graham Hamlet were amassing a large army to march against the town. The king sent the Defender of the Crown along with a small detachment of troops to rally the townspeople of Grand Hamlet and defend the town from any attack. The Defender of the Crown was successful in rallying the townspeople and managed to save Grand Hamlet from being overrun. With Grand Hamlet saved and Blackhand's raiding parties routed, the time to secure a lasting peace in the area around Grand Hamlet arose. The Defender of the Crown sought out the outpost known as Kairos, from which the army against Grand Hamlet amassed. After building a small encampment in the vicinity of the outpost to gather his troops, the Defender of the Crown led them into battle against the outpost, managing to destroy it. By that time, it had been some 20 months since Sir Anduin Lothar had led an expedition into the Dead Mines to search for the lost Tome of Divinity. They were never heard from again. However, the king's champion had recently appeared to the abbot of Northshire Abbey in a vision, battered and pleading for assistance. The king, having heard of the news, sent the Defender of the Crown along with a detachment of warriors and healers into the mines in an attempt to find Sir Lothar and his expedition crew, heal them, and bring them back alive. Even though the mines were littered with ogres, the Defender of the Crown, along with his soldiers, still managed to cut through the ogres' ranks, and finally managed to find the gravely wounded Sir Anduin Lothar, along with some other injured members of his expedition. The healers at the scene immediately healed Sir Lothar, and soon after he resumed his job as the king's champion. After a period of time, the king assigned some of his knights to the aid of the Defender of the Crown, so that the latter's task of riding Elwyn forth from Blackhand's dark minions could be more readily completed. They set up in an outpost near the southeast edge of the forest. It wasn't long before an orc encampment filled with orc warriors was found and destroyed, thus earning the Kingdom of Stormwind the strategic key to securing the borderlands. Later on, the king ordered the Defender of the Crown to go to Northshire Abbey. The monks living in the town were under siege by a band of human warriors that had been convinced by an enemy agent to fight against the crown. A platoon of knights was once again put under the Defender of the Crown's army, whom with them managed to successfully defend Northshire Abbey in time. With the abbey secure, the Defenders of the Crown marched his army to the source of the attackers and laid waste to them. With Sunnyglade completely overrun by the orcish horde, a group of scouts were sent into the remnants of the city to scout out the place. They reported back that the survivors had been taken to a hidden orcish compound to serve as slaves. Intelligence had also confirmed that all the slaves were grouped together in an off-site location, and that an enclosure had to be destroyed in order to make a path for the prisoners from which they could escape from. The Defender of the Crown took a detachment of warriors to the town and managed to crush all opposition, destroying the orcish encampment in the process. With the peasants of Sunnyglade set free, the rebuilding of Sunnyglade was commenced. The final march towards Stormwind Keep. After the destruction of Sunnyglade, the orcs mastered the newfound magic. With this power in their hands, the time was ripe to burn the human occupation from the nearby lands. The Kingdom of Stormwind had held 2 outposts to the south of Ogrim's encampment. After a reconnaissance of the area, orc scouts reported that the key to a victory for them in this confrontation would be to hold back the human forces at their bridges, whilst threatening the orcs' attack force to prepare for a massive all-out attack. After all troops were prepared, the attack commenced. The outposts were laid to waste and all the human troops were slain. After tasting victory at the battle in Northern Elwyn Forest, it was clear to Ogrim that one decisive blow to the Kingdom of Stormwind would make the total and complete domination of the humans a simple matter. His spies had gathered intelligence that pointed to an encampment near the center of the kingdom, a place where their knights and soldiers were sent to be trained. Since the humans were not expecting an attack, it was a simple task. Ogrim's troops destroyed the entire place and left no survivors, in the process, greatly weakening the kingdom's forces. In the final march towards King Lane's home, Stormwind Keep was at hand. The final march towards King Lane's home, Stormwind Keep, was at hand. I have to repeat this because I think I'm moronic and I can't read anymore. Or I can't talk. Both of them work. Only 2 settlements stood in the orcish horde's way. The hour of doom had arrived for the humans. Ogrim had ordered What did he order? The complete and utter destruction of the twin cities, Goldshire and Moonbrook, in order to sever the lifeline between the king and his people. The orc troops under the command of Ogrim marched on to the twin cities, and after a lengthy battle razed them both to the ground. With this decisive battle, the only stronghold that the Kingdom of Stormwind had left was the capital itself, Stormwind City. The death of Medivh. Khadgar and Garona were the first to discover that Medivh aided in the bringing of the orcish horde into Azeroth. To attempt to try and find out how the orcs entered Azeroth and from where the Dark Portal came from, Garona requested that Khadgar summon a vision of the past concerning Gul'dan and the Dark Portal. In the vision, the two observed Gul'dan being given instructions by someone who was referred to himself as the Guardian, whom Khadgar and Garona knew to be Medivh. After the horrifying discovery, what's wrong with me? Khadgar and Garona escaped from Karazhan to bring the disturbing news to the King of Stormwind, King Lane, and to his knightly champion. Anduin Lothar, of course. Who do you think it was? While Lothar was quick to accept the news, the king had to take the matter into consideration. In the wee hours of morning, yeah, it says wee, Without alerting the king, Lothar awoke Garona and Khadgar and led them to the top of one of Stormwind's Keep's towers. There, waiting for the trio, were a pack of griffins, sent by the dwarves, and a couple of other footmen under Lothar's command. As soon as the group readied themselves, they took off to the tower of Karazhan. Lothar charged Gavinard with commanding Stormwind City's defenses in his absence. After arriving in the tower, the group couldn't find any trace of the Magus and declared that he had escaped. However, before leaving the tower, Garona managed to locate a hidden secret door leading into what seemed like an inverse version of Karazhan. As the company started their descent into the inverse of Karazhan, a magic trap set by Medivh was triggered and unleashed a group of demonic beasts onto the company. While Lothar and his men managed to hold the beasts off, Khadgar and Garona continued their descent to find him. Finally, reaching the inverse observatory, the duo found Medivh. While the brace were confronting the Magus, Medivh confirmed to them that he truly was Sargeras and that he had been planning this war for hundreds of years to offer his physical form from his tomb so that he could destroy Azeroth. To free his physical form from the tomb so he could destroy Azeroth and all of its inhabitants. While Medivh was still talking, Garona attempted to stab him in the back, but Medivh noticed her and cast a spell on her, causing her to stagger backwards. With this move, the Brace started their attempts in disposing the Magus, but he proved to them that he was far too powerful for them to handle. Not long after their brawl, the duo was on their knees, dazed and wounded, and the Magus was preparing to kill Khadgar. But by a stroke of luck, the king's champion, Lothar, appeared at the scene at this exact moment and forced his old friend to do battle with him in order to buy the others some time. While Lothar was keeping the Magus preoccupied, Khadgar managed to sneak around the room without being noticed. Lothar, in the end, too, proved to be no match for the Master Mage, and before long he too was wounded and dazed. With that being done, the Magus returned to where Khadgar had been kneeling to finish him off, but to Medivh's surprise he was not there. Khadgar was standing behind Medivh with his sword pressed against Medivh's breast. At the first flinch from Medivh, Khadgar lunged forward and drove his rune sword into Medivh's heart, mortally wounding him in the process. With Medivh about to die, the demon lord Sargeras attempted to emerge from within the Magus to avoid being destroyed along with Medivh. But before he could release himself, Sir Lothar decapitated Medivh's head, causing the Titan to dissipate away and for Medivh to die. Medivh was the first guardian to be killed in combat in centuries. With Medivh's death, Gul'dan was comatose due to entering Medivh's mind to search for information at his time of death. Ogrim saw this as an opportunity to take down Blackhand, and so he marched to him and challenged him for the supremacy of the Horde, a challenge which he won. The Second Siege of Stormwind Keep and the Fall of the Kingdom. The Orcish Horde was gathered like buzzards to carrion, as the moment of destiny was close at hand. A low growl filled the air as the Wolf Riders whipped their savage mounts into a frenzy. The earth shook as catapults were loaded and moved into position. Under the mantle of Ogrim Doomhammer, the various Orcish clans began their siege on Stormwind Keep. The catapults let loose their fiery rocks as the bulk of the main horde marched towards the main gate, with the Blackrock clan charging from the eastern wall. Within moments, Stormwind Keep was ablaze, with shadows dancing on the walls. While the militia were busy trying to put out the fire, Garona, under the command of the Shadow Council, assassinated King Lane while delivering her report, which stated that as long as a strong heart was on the throne, the men's morale would not falter. With the assassination of the king, the men lost their morale and Stormwind Keep fell under the might of the Orcish Horde. And now we'll go to the aftermath of this. The aftermath of the war with the Orcish Horde, or the aftermath of the war for the Orcish Horde. Ogrim wanted to turn the Horde into an honorable force, torture Garona into revealing whatever secrets lied beneath the Horde. Her non-orc blood made her too weak to withstand much pain, and she quickly revealed the Shadow Council and its location. Ogrim burst into their meeting and slaughtered them on the spot, leaving only a couple of the warlocks, Cho'Gall and Gul'dan, alongside. Soon after, Ogrim formed an alliance with Gul'dan, and preparations for the Second War began. The aftermath of the war for the Kingdom of Stormwind. Anduin Lothar had no choice than to declare the war lost and save what remained by gathering the tattered remnants of the army and as many civilians as he could, to lead them into a desperate retreat across the Great Sea, towards the northern kingdom of Lordaeron to beseech aid from King Terenas Menethil II. Not all survivors could flee on time, and the Orcish hunter, Zigris, became infamous for tracking down Stormwind refugees and slaughtering them for the sport. Following Lothar's impassioned speech in Lordaeron, Terenas called for an emergency council of war to discuss the Orcish threat. Terenas, through skilled political maneuvering, petitioned the support of the human kingdoms of Stormgrad, Kultiras, Alterac, and Gilneas, and also the city of Dalaran. While most of the human nations banded together and pledged their support for their new alliance, King Perenhold of Alterac and King Gengraven of Gilneas withheld their allegiance. Perenhold because he feared the humans would be defeated by the orcs, and Greymane because he felt that Gilneas was strong enough to stand on its own. With this, preparations for the Second War began. Sometime later, after the end of the war, the Stone of Remembrance, a monument located in the Hero's Vigil in the center of Stone Cairn Lake, was erected to commemorate the humans who lost their lives during the war. And this has been the first war. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one.